G'day. Many of the F1 drivers are not happy with the huge change in the way they have to drive their cars. Now, it sounds strange, but you'd think that all that's required is to put your foot down and drive the thing as fast as you can around the corners. Well, that's not the case with the 2026 cars. These new cars are complicated beasts, and today I heard complicated and challenging from so many drivers. We've just completed the first 3 days of pre-season testing, and the drivers have been talking and saying plenty about what they've learned so far behind the wheel. Now, this is a new era of cars. You only have to look at the timing sheets from the past 3 days to realise that there is a huge difference between the fastest and the slowest cars on track, and it's in the order of 4 to 6 seconds. Now, obviously, they're not out there racing as yet, but it's very rare to see such a big difference. One of the drivers I spoke to today said that he wouldn't be surprised if there were gaps of 4 or 5 seconds in qualifying. Last year in Qatar, the difference from first to last, I think, was less than a second, and I believe maybe even half a second. As it stands at the moment, there are some very big gaps, and it could be that come Australia, the first race of the year, remember, we've only got another 3 days of testing left to go. If they're not that much more progressed, it could well be that we'll have those big gaps in qualifying. And halfway through the race, it might be that cars are being lapped, and towards the end of the race, one driver suggested that he wouldn't be surprised to see cars 3 and 4 laps down. If that's the case, that's not going to be good for racing. But let me go into a little bit more detail. As I said earlier, I'm no technical whiz, but Ted Kravitz and I had a chat today, and he explained a little bit about how these cars generate their own electricity. And I'll go back to my days as a youngster riding a bicycle. If I wanted the light on, I'd have to flick this little bizzo over, and that would run against the wheel. What it did was provided friction, it turned that into energy, and that powered the light. But in doing that, it slowed my progress down because there was friction. And that's what's going to happen in these new F1 cars. What I understand will probably happen is that if you've got a long straight, and let's take China, it's the second race of the year, that straight is very long. Towards the end of that, drivers may have to recharge their battery. And in doing so, that will slow their car. Now, I don't know how much it will slow it, but it will slow it. Now, if there are 4 or 5 cars in a group, and they all do the same thing, well, it's status quo. They all stay in that same order. But as someone explained to me today, if one of them decides, no, I'm not going to charge my battery there, they could overtake 3 or 4 cars in one hit. Now that would be great for the sport. Obviously, that car then has lower energy than the others, so there'll probably be a retake once they get around that corner and shoot off. I can't remember which driver mentioned this in their interview, but they suggested that there could be drivers queuing at the last corner in qualifying in order to maximise their energy for that final run. Certainly, the drivers have to come to grips very quickly with a completely new way of driving. Will the older drivers be able to pick it up as quickly? That's what we're going to find out. On day 2 of testing, Pierre Gasly pulled his car up at turn 1. I happened to be there and go and take some photos at quite close range. And listening to Pierre, because James Vowles and Alex Albon were up there as well, so Pierre joined them. And it was a lovely little chat, and I was lucky enough to be privy to what they were saying. The gist of it is, both Pierre and Alex are miffed at how the whole thing's going. They'll get on top of it. They have to. But certainly as it stood yesterday, there was plenty of doubt as to how the things are going to pan out. In fact, there were a few cars that had to pull over today and yesterday, and that's to be expected when you've got a brand new piece of machinery and a very high-tech one at that. You probably saw Max's comments stating that it's very much like Formula E on steroids. But my gut feel is that Max is probably one of the leaders in coming to understand how to work the car. And when you look at the Red Bull power unit, the engine, it's looking pretty darn good. Their work with Ford seems to have paid dividends. At the other end of the scale, I watched Fernando Alonso outside the garage at Aston Martin early this evening, and he looked most concerned. He was standing watching Lance Stroll, who was sitting in the car and the mechanics working on it. Now, they are 4+ seconds behind the leaders. They're using a Honda engine, and I imagine things aren't too happy in that camp at the moment. All of the 11 teams have been working feverishly over the past 3 days to get as much time on the track. Graham Loden, team principal at Cadillac, says that they've covered 1,700 kilometres. That's more than 5 race distances. And I think at the moment, Cadillac aren't looking the worst out there. A couple of other things that I learnt today. This year's cars have 15 less litres of fuel in the tank. Last year, 90. This year, 75. So that means there's more of an emphasis on the electrical side of the engine. You might have already heard that there is a boost button. This is what it looks like on the steering wheel, although I can't remember which car this was, but it doesn't look like that button actually goes in, but that's the button that you use when you want to overtake. And I was reading McLaren's press release tonight from their testing 3 days, and they were saying that they spent a good amount of time today with Oscar working out how to overtake, because it's not just simply putting your foot down. The actual line in the press release is performing multiple overtaking manoeuvres, giving the Australian driver key insight into race preparation and what managing the car in traffic could look like this season. Another thing that came up today was this 3-day test is the first time that the drivers have had a chance to launch the car off the line. And a lot of them were pulling over in pit lane at the exit, and then they go through this routine to get their car set up to launch. And it was a surprisingly lengthy procedure. I did notice a lot of wheel spin, and on track what I noticed was plenty of slips, slides, lockups, which indicated to me, a novice when it comes to the mechanical side of this sport, that it is a tricky game piloting those cars around a circuit. Another thing, 15 of the 22 drivers have performance clauses in their contract. In other words, they have to achieve certain things. There's no guarantee that those good drivers driving good cars last year will be able to replicate it this year if things become too tricky inside that cockpit. That could well be a crazy situation come the summer break. If you haven't seen the timesheets for today's on track, Mercedes killed it. First and second, Kimi, followed by George. But listening to George in the TV media pen today, he was congratulating Red Bull on their power unit. He seems to think they are the team to beat. Go back a little bit, Red Bull were the team saying that Mercedes were the team to beat. So there's a bit of gamesmanship, I think, going on there, because nobody wants to be the favourite. Another thing mentioned today was the fact that it's a lot warmer here in Bahrain than it was in Barcelona, and the cars are behaving differently. But really, we're only 6 days in, so yes, it is early, but the initial signs are that a lot of those drivers are going to be heading back to Europe tonight, not feeling terribly confident, as will some of the team principals. What I think F1 is going to love is the anticipation around the Australian Grand Prix. With only another 3 days of testing, there'll still be plenty we don't know about. Reliability, that will be a big issue. Will drivers have full confidence in their machines by then? And who would hazard a guess as to what that first podium might look like? We could end up with a real surprise. Perhaps an Alpine on the podium, maybe even a Haas. Haas today, very strong. I think that first race will rate extremely high. It'll be hugely anticipated around the world, and I can't wait to get there. Let's go through quickly who did the most laps in the 3 days. McLaren led the list with 422. Well, they didn't actually, shared the lead with Williams. One fewer lap, Ferrari, 390 for Haas, 354 for Audi, 343 for Red Bull, and then Racing Bulls, Cadillac, Alpine, Mercedes, and poor Aston Martin, a mere 206 laps. Now in a second I'm going to run through all of the liveries and tell you what I think of them. Plus, I'm going to go through all of the team kit that the crew wear behind the scenes. But before I get there, look at this. This is Mercado Libre, a very big company in Latin America, sponsoring Sergio Perez. I believe they also have a sponsorship deal with Gabriel Bortoleto, but it was pointed out to me that their logo is not on the sponsors page on Alpine. Now that surprised the heck out of me because, of course, they were a very strong backer last year of Franco Colapinto, and they were a major reason that Franco is in that car. Of course, the season hasn't started. It may well be that that company does come on board and injects more cash into Alpine, but a lot of you have been saying, what's going on? Franco fans, you might need to lobby that company and get them to show some support for the young Argentinian. Let's go now to my rankings of the liveries. Now, I should say straight up front, there's not any one of these cars that I would rate less than 8.5 out of 10. I think they're beautiful looking, but some are more beautiful than the others. So I'm going to start at my favourite, McLaren. I love the papaya. Always have. I think Lando's helmet also complements it. And from the top down, it's just solid. Second, Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. Look, I love white. And I quite like what they've done on this back panel here where the Ford Racing logo is. It's black underneath and it becomes a little, like a triangle point there. I like that. They are also one of very few cars to have the driver's number on the back. In third, I've gone with Red Bull. When you see that shine on it, the gloss, which is not really done any justice by these pictures. I think it really pops. The only thing I will say about it is the number on the back here. I don't like either the 3 or the 6. I think it's completely out of character with the entire car. For fourth, I've got another white car, well, predominantly white, Haas. Don't much like that GR logo at the back there, but it's easy to photograph. And I guess from my side of things, I am looking at this from a photographical point of view. And I know your choices will differ, and by all means you can go crazy on me in the comments, but if you're too abusive, I'll delete them. Midfield, fifth, Ferrari. I would have it higher if it wasn't for that white bit at the back with the HP logo. It's such an iconic colour, and this year that red is a little bit lighter and pops on the car. It's nice. I'm a big fan of the Shell logo. They've been around for so many years, and I think it complements the red. And from the top down, that white yoke that sits around the driver, it doesn't grab me. I've put Williams next at sixth. I would like it a lot better if it didn't have so many different components to it. There's light blue, there's white, there's dark blue, there's black. It just seems like they've got every colour of the rainbow in there. And they certainly haven't been shy about putting in logos, but the real highlight for me for this car is that Duracell logo up the top. I think it's a beautiful piece of marketing on a fine car. Oh, okay, one thing, you can't see it on this shot, but look at this shot. This is a gambling company, which I'm not terribly fond of sponsoring cars, but that aside, I thought they would have the actual numbers that they have on a roulette wheel for the wheel, but they don't. Well, they've got all the numbers, but they've not got them in the same order as is on a roulette wheel, and I don't know why. But from the top, the Williams looks stunning because it's pretty much all blue. Next in the list is Mercedes. I like these big, thick silver stripes. I gather that's paying homage to Adidas. And do you know that there is still a red star on the car? It's up here, away from the silver ones. In eighth position, I've got the Aston Martin. I just don't love this green in low light. It's very hard for me to tell. And I'll tell you what I did the other day. When I was measuring the sound levels of all the cars towards turn 1, I wouldn't look at the cars as they came through because I was looking at the meter. And then I had to wait until they turned right and I could get a side-on view. And I found it very hard to work out what this car was. And it was pretty good light when I did that. But in overcast and wet days, I find that very hard to work out which car it is. And in terms of number of logos, the Aston Martin has a lot, certainly a lot more than the Audi, which is very light on in terms of sponsors. I thought I would love this silver at the track a little bit more, but in real life for me, it's not my favourite, obviously, if I've got it in at 9th position, but this car is still above an 8.5 out of 10. And I gather at some point they'll have logos on that rear wing. And at 10th, number 10, Pierre Gasly. Well, that or 43 for Franco. I don't know why I don't love this, but it's never been a favourite of mine. It certainly stands out at the track, you can't miss it in terms of its colouring, but I've got it in at 10th, which just leaves Cadillac in 11th. I would have liked to have seen a bit more colour in it, but that's me. I know Cadillac is very much a black and silver brand, and I think it looks a lot better from the top than it does from side on. This is what my top 11 looks like. Having ranked the car's livery, I'm now going to rank all of the team kit. This is the gear that not the drivers wear, pretty much the crew that work for the teams. And at number 1, Red Bull. I love this new shirt. It's got a bit of detail, in fact, quite a lot of detail on the shirt along with the logos, but a nice detail, every crew member's name. They all get 5 of these shirts at the start of the year, and if they ruin one or whatever, they can get a replacement. Are the shoes provided? Of course, but these are last year's shoes, and I was told are not that comfortable. And remember, these guys spend a lot of time on their feet. At number 2, I've gone with Visa Cash App. I like the white. This year, we've got this theme that runs from the shirt to the pants, and they wear these baggy Hugo pants, which strangely enough look okay. And with Hugo doing the top and bottom, they also do the shoes. I should mention that Red Bull was a polo and a t-shirt for VCARB. At number 3, I've gone with Haas. They have a quarter zip, and the thing that stands this out from some of the other black teams is obviously the red on the shoulders. And what do they wear on their feet? They wear Alpine stars. Just outside a podium finish is Williams. They have a round neck t-shirt for their top, and the bottom half of the Williams shirt has some sort of pattern on it, which breaks up the monotony of just plain blue. Of course, they also have jackets, but for today in Bahrain, I just did it on the t-shirts. And shoes-wise, they use On Running. At 5th, Aston Martin, top to bottom green, a button-up polo, and like so many of the teams, they have a little zip pocket on the breast where you can slide in your F1 pass. And the shoes, Puma Nitros. In fifth, I've gone with McLaren, their button-up polo. And shoes-wise, they've got Pumas with, of course, a touch of papaya. If you're wondering who I've got in seventh, wonder no more because it is Ferrari. They are the only team that has a full button-up shirt, and all of the crew have to wear their shirts tucked into their waistband. And like McLaren, they also wear Puma Nitros with a flash of Ferrari red. Who have I got in eighth, I hear you cry? Well, that would be Mercedes. Pretty simple colour scheme here. Although the shoes I will rate highly because I love Adidas, what are these, Ultra Boost. In fact, I must have about 10 pairs of them. And I love it. I just wish they would make a waterproof one, like a Gore-Tex one. And Adidas, if you do, I'm a size 46 European. 3 to go, and at ninth, I've got Audi. If you have a look on the back of that shirt, my gosh, that is huge signage for their 3 main sponsors. And shoes-wise, look at the stripes on those. I've got Cadillac at 10th. They do have a stripe down the side which breaks up that colour a little bit. Pretty simple logo-wise with Cadillac dominating, as you can imagine. In fact, there are 2 or 3 different designs of these shirts I found at the track, and there'll probably be another one before we hit Australia. And shoes, these Nikes. And at the tail end of the field, I've got Alpine. I'm not against it. I think they're all great designs, but somebody has to go at the bottom of the list. And the shoes are Puma Nitro, so that's 3 teams using those shoes. And 2 teams with the crew's names on the chest, VCarb and Red Bull. I've got to go to Formula E tomorrow in Jeddah, so I'm going to have to say goodbye to you in just a sec. And I think I will be driving a Formula E car on track. You'll see a video about that coming up very shortly. If you've enjoyed this video, thank you for getting through to the end. Please hit that like button. And for the 50% of you or so who are not members of the channel, well, subscribers, could you please hit that button too? I'd be most grateful. And for a whole lot of extra content, that's where you need to look. Thanks for watching and stay passionate.